So I first started Jiu-Jitsu in the gi in 2019, and for about a whole year, I was oblivious to using leg locks until I switched to no gi after the Great Plague. Looking back, my first no gi session felt like a completely new martial art to me, so ultimately that became the driver for my motivation in wanting to learn and get better, which flows into today's topic. If you train no gi jiu-jitsu, chances are you've been exposed to leg locks to some degree. However, as a beginner, the challenge with leg locks is that the initial learning curve can be very technical. I hope this video can help provide a study path and a sense of focus for anyone just starting out and getting into leg locking.
Hey, let's go.
Alright, so first things first, leg locks can get very technical, and coming from a 10th Planet gym, I thought of the leg locking system almost like the rubber guard system in terms of like, we can learn the initial steps, but then it's kind of up to you to determine how deep you want to get into the system. Because ultimately there are counters to initial threats, and therefore like if you could deny those initial counters, you could play a different kind of game. When learning leg locks, it was kind of akin to starting school, in the sense that for me, like starting out, it really helped for me to recognize all the different leg positions and entanglements. The big theme that I should have respected more as a beginner was that a different shift in leg placement can change the leg position entirely. So for example, like guys who are really good at ashi positions can quickly turn, say like an ashi 1 position into 50-50, into backside 50-50, and then into cross ashi. And ultimately what that means as the attacker or even the defender, it means that in every different ashi configuration, your reactions have to be different and they have to quickly match what to do and how to react accordingly in those scenarios. Early on, what really helped were the warm-ups by 10th Planet. I believe the B days are called Hail Mary, and one of the days includes a leg lock sequence that will go through all of the leg lock positions. And then from there, I would just drill that until I could recognize and start naming all the positions individually. Definitely go check them out. If I find a good link, I'll put it in the description of this video. Now, something that I've been personally working on in my life and in my jiu-jitsu is just working on my humility. And I find leg locks taught me humility in a very unique way, in the sense that the moment you get caught in traps, and whenever someone is obviously like a better leg locker than you, the submissions can come on really quick. And I've been injured a few times just from not knowing the position and or thinking like I can get out of a really sticky or bad situation. And so overall, leg locking really helped me develop a better understanding of my body position, as well as tapping early. That being said, it also segues into a secondary point, which is leg locks can come from a multitude of positions, even if you're escaping from bad positions. So John Danaher's leg locking system touches upon these 10 principles. I'm going to leave the principles individually in the description. However, it's really interesting to study, and you'll see that a lot of the leg locking instructionals will touch base upon aspects of these principles, whether it be a small or to a large degree.
There's pros and cons to both. There's also methods of harmonizing the two. So you have one foot on the inside and one foot on the outside. You can do it with a straight leg where you heel hook from the outside, or you can bring the leg across your center line and heel hook from the inside. You will start to notice as you work through these different variations that some present advantages over others. All of them come at a price.
Now, given how technical leg locks can be, it's important to study and drill leg locks individually. So there's definitely a lot of brain power involved. That said, drilling leg locks is physically less tiresome, and on days where I found myself to be really fatigued from training from the previous day or doing other activities, I found myself just, drilling leg locks with a partner and have that be my training session. One super important thing that I want to shout out is that having training partners that you can trust, especially when learning leg locking, is so key. And I really want to thank Kevin and Ryan for showing me the ropes. That said, when we're purely drilling the leg locking, it can sometimes seem a bit tedious or even like so technical that it gets confusing sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's definitely worth it. All right, so let's get into the chart and start talking about the 4 pillars of knowledge. So the most practical instructional for leg locks in my opinion, is no-gi leg locks by Stephen Kesting and Oliver Taza. Now, it's fine, this one doesn't get talked about a lot, but I found like a lot of the drills in here really help me in my development in understanding the basics. Now, that being said, it doesn't go through a lot of the principles that John Danaher talks about. However, this can definitely get you started. Having done all the drills in this instructional, it's helped me recognize the different ashi positions, as well as kind of like open up my mind into a broader scope to see ashi entries from different positions, such as a cool ashi entry from omoplata, for example, or even like the importance of using the kipping escape. Now, for the theoretical knowledge base, hands down, it has to be Enter the System by John Danaher. Most of the jargon, concepts, and naming all come from this instructional, and this instructional definitely helped me with being able to digest leg locking content and kind of assess the importance of which kinds of ashis to work on and focus. A fun thing that I like to watch in jiu-jitsu are definitely good leg lockers, and just whenever watching their matches, studying and calling out the exact positions that they're in, and then working backwards to kind of study how they interpret leg locking and interpret the 10 principles. I want to keep this point in here because I think from studying matches, we could definitely see the way leg locks manifest themselves in scrambles and tournament. I've been studying a lot of Eddie Cummings lately, and watching his matches and then working backwards has definitely helped my knowledge base. Something to keep in mind whenever you're trying to find leg lock instructionals are that a lot of the times it focuses on either attacking and or counter-attacking. Rarely will you have both attacking, counter-attacking, and then defending as well. That said, a lot of the offensive leg lock instructionals, you can kind of work backwards to figure out what the defenses are to deny your opponents what they need in order to finish. Moving on to some more advanced content, I want to shout out Shy Ace's Deep Sea Leg Locks. This instructional is actually pretty entertaining, and some of the leg lock content is actually pretty practical and a bit underutilized. Most importantly though, like this is the best instructional on learning the kipping escape, and then from there going into leg locks and leg lock counters.
Don't leave an open hand like a sissy. Cheese, bitches.
Now, Robert Deagle has a lot of really strong and free content on his YouTube page, and in my opinion, I think he's one of the best leg lockers right now, especially one of like the best leg lock teachers. His seminars and video content go a step above in discussing really strong finishing mechanics as well as unique and practical leg lock entry methods. Matej Shazinski has a really good instructional on understanding Aoki locks as well as straight ankle locks, and I wanted to shout this out because a lot of the heel hooks, knee bars, and holds may be not allowed in beginner level competition, but the straight ankle lock is, and by understanding the entries and principles from this instructional, it will definitely translate into some really strong finishing mechanics and finishing ability early on, especially if you want to commit to leg locking. The Dynamic series and Modern series by Jason Rao is a really good answer if you want to go deep dive into one specific ashi entanglement and then see how that changes into other things. Jason Rao does a really good job of laying out a game plan as well as a path that you can follow that's really effective and really fun to learn. John Carlo Bodoni's instructional on leg lock defense was really good, and in some ways I actually enjoyed it much more than the Gordon Ryan one on leg lock defense. The content here was really general and broad, and at the end of the day, super digestible and really easy to understand. So now we go a bit deeper into the iceberg and go through some more advanced instructionals. Now, I think Gordon Ryan's instructional on leg locks, his whole leg series is really nice, but it is pretty advanced. If I personally put myself in a beginner's shoes and think about not watching the Enter the System and going straight into this, I think I'd be pretty confused in terms of like not knowing the jargon and the principles of what the goals are and what we're trying to achieve in leg locking. That said, definitely pay attention to this instructional because although some of the content may seem repetitive, there's actually really small details that can change your game entirely. Definitely keep this one on the radar. This instructional by Craig Jones goes deep into leg lock defense, and I would take precaution drilling a lot of these moves and definitely drill it with trustworthy partners who understand leg lock positions well, because there are some really deep like leg locks and inversions that he uses to get out of some pretty sticky situations, but this is definitely one that's worth studying. Personally, I like to think of the cross ashi position as kind of like the endgame points, which meaning like by the time you get into cross ashi, you either have a high likelihood of finishing and or if you're defending, that you should be able to escape it at all costs. Robert Deagle's Kani Basami course is very practical, especially for a topic that's as complex as getting into cross-ashi through inversions and Kani scissors. Finally, last but not least is Mikey Musamechi's instructional, the ones on leg pommeling and the Mikey lock. After drilling and spending literally a whole day on this instructional, I found myself having a really strong sense of bodily awareness, especially where my legs are whenever they're inverted. And my Kani entries have really grown significantly after watching this instructional. So this instructional is something that is definitely going to take a lot of time to learn and study, and your partners are probably going to want to be very patient with this one. On that note, there weren't a lot of leg locks actually in that instructional. It was more of a passing instructional from like that inverted guard, but just again, like the bodily awareness with the legs is just like the main takeaway that I got out of this. All right, so that's it for this week's study guide. Now, just on a final note, I want to say like the learning curve with leg locks is unique in that learning leg locks takes a lot of mental energy, whereas the opposite comparison could be doing something like trying to learn wrestling and doing all of the drills and moves and just even like conditioning yourself for wrestling. That said, I think beginners can really get a lot of just studying a lot of like the green categories as well as the yellow categories down here. If you guys are interested in having this chart, please follow me on Instagram and I'll send you a link to the Google Docs. If you found this video helpful, please make sure to like and subscribe, and also let me know down in the comments which study guide you'd want me to see next. That being said, if you have time to kill, you have time to drill. Peace.